Welcome to This Team Is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Demetri Ravanos. And Lauren, what is killing me this week is an absolute lack of Super Bowl excitement. I am already very much in offseason mode for the Panthers.
For the Panthers, I totally get it.
Yeah.
But I mean, no Super Bowl excitement. What do you just hate Patrick Mahomes? Why are you such a hater, Demetri? Do you just hate the Chiefs? Why are you a hater?
Okay, here's the thing.
This is exhausting, by the way. I hated the Patriots. I don't hate the Chiefs.
Right.
Am I tired of seeing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? Yeah. Is that their fault? No. It's a me problem. I can understand that. But does that make me a hater because I'd like to see a little variety sometimes? I don't think so.
Yeah.
By the way.
I don't think the Chiefs are hateable the way the Patriots were. Like, there was a reason we hated the Patriots,
don't get me
right?
wrong. There are people on the Chiefs that when they win a Super Bowl,
okay,
individually, I'm displeased.
Okay, so this is what I was going to say, right? If you hate the Chiefs, it can be because of a variety of things.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes is a fucking dork. Harrison Butker's politics.
That's why I like
Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. Everybody
Harrison
has a
Butker, right?
Everybody has a different reason, and I think as a result, we are not united as a nation in our hatred of the Chiefs. Like, I do not believe there is some sort of vast conspiracy against or desire to see the Chiefs fail.
To see them fail. Yeah, no.
I mean, there is now because they are on the verge of winning their fourth Super Bowl in 5 years, but.
And by the way, their fans are not nearly as obnoxious as Patriots fans either, which is saying something. I'm not saying they're not obnoxious.
Yeah.
They're not.
Well, sure. I mean, look, Lauren.
So there were a lot of things working against the Patriots. I actually became to enjoy their head coaches. Certainly this over the years, but their quarterback's the worst.
As a Celtics fan, I've often said this, and this is exactly what you're getting at with their fans, Patriots fans.
Yeah.
It does, as a Celtics fan, it does make me sad to know I'm happy at the same time as Marky Mark. Like,
right, that's what I think part of it is.
Right,
is it's like, oh, good for, because I genuinely have loved for a long time watching Patrick Mahomes play football. I think that would be a difficult thing for me to start to dislike seeing.
Right.
However, I would like to see some of those people beat him sometimes because I also very much enjoy watching them play football, and it makes me sad.
I'll localize this just a little bit because Joe Obvious hates when I say this, but it is true. I think Chiefs fans could learn the same lesson that Carolina Hurricanes fans need to learn, which is it's Kansas City / it's Raleigh. Nobody gives a shit about you. You've got to be at championship level for people to even care. Like, nobody has a deep-seated hatred of the Chiefs.
For your, like, who you are.
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah, whereas, like, Patriots.
There is no, now granted, there's
no, like, geographical base.
There's
like,
no, they hate us because they ain't us.
Right, in terms of, like, your like location / culture,
right?
Whatever that part is. Yes.
Right, Lauren. So that the people can see you, can I get you to slide a little bit away from the perfect?
All right.
Perfect.
There we go.
All right, let's dive into Panthers talk for today, Lauren. My feed from The Athletic has been inundated this week with guys either demanding trades, being told
you're going to be
traded,
and not being very happy about it.
Right. Or, hey, here are the guys that are probably prime trade candidates. It seems like everybody, Lauren, is already in postseason mode and not feeling Super Bowl excitement. So let me ask you this. Is there anybody in the league, short of Patrick Mahomes, that you trade the farm for if you are the Carolina Panthers?
No, I don't. Because what farm?
Right.
There's not a large farm to.
The
only farm is picks, and I don't want any more picks traded. I'm tired. They need to build through the draft.
Okay, so here's the only
of a Super Bowl right now.
Here's the only thing that I would say. Like, some of the candidates that you have seen is like Garrett Wilson from the Jets has made it pretty clear he does not want to play with Aaron Rodgers anymore. George Pickens from the Steelers.
But again, like, yeah.
That kind of feels like we're running back the Deontay Johnson thing. Like, it feels like the exact same issues.
Right.
Cooper Kupp from the Rams has been told the Rams want to move on from him. Myles Garrett has told the Browns he wants to move on. I think Myles Garrett would be one of those guys that, like, you really consider what you have, and maybe the 8th pick becomes trade bait. Yeah, if Garrett is a guy you can get. However,
that's all you'd have to give up.
Exactly. If that's all you had to give up.
I would be big on that. If that's all you had to give up, because essentially what you would ideally want is someone of that quality.
Right.
at that spot. So like, yeah.
So here's the thing. Here's where I come down.
But I bet you they'd want more.
If number 8 is all you would need to make a trade for one of these guys, I would do it for Garrett Wilson in a heartbeat because he has shown you what he can be. He's 24 years old. Like, I think that's worth doing. Pickens and Kupp, yeah, they're difference makers. I think Kupp could be valuable to Bryce as a alpha receiver that is also a veteran and not like, isn't George Pickens like 23, 24?
I don't know how old he is.
He's super young. Like, I think
an old man name, but
he does. He does. Mean he's old. I would rather have the steady hand of a veteran, but at 31, I am not trading a first 2-round pick for Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I'm good there, honestly. And also, like, I mean, it's whatever. I'm sure he'd be a professional, but like, he doesn't even want to get traded.
Right.
And so you want to send him to this situation where obviously while the Panthers look to be improving, there's a lot that's still not ideal. No.
So you are going to have to figure out ways to be active in terms of adding pieces. I do wonder, Lauren, let's use Myles Garrett as an example, because that is a heavy position of need
big time.
for the Panthers.
Yeah,
right?
That'd be, like, to me, that'd be my perfect scenario.
Right.
You could swap an 8 for him and maybe a player or two. It just depends on who they are.
So he is one of the 2 or 3 best at his position in the league right now. Right. I wonder if they said they wanted 2 or 3 picks for him and it all was concentrated within this year. Is that something you would do? Can I interest you to Tommy Tremble?
I mean, would.
Yeah.
Like, and I like Tommy. I think Tommy played great. I'd be happy to have him back, but like, would.
What
about both of them?
Does not only the cost, but the narrative around the trade to get up to number 1 to take Bryce Young, does it linger? Is that part of what it is you do not want to relive?
It's not that. It's really just at this point, like, it wasn't just that trade. It was, there were other trades around that time where essentially the Panthers had like a lot of their picks in the first few rounds gone over a couple year span. And I think it really impacted their ability to build through the draft. And it made it so that they couldn't miss on quarterbacks, but they were taking guys that they had no idea.
Yeah.
If they were trading for guys, they had no idea if they would pan out. And then, obviously drafting Bryce. And I'm not saying, like, obviously, if you have a quarterback you feel like you're sure about, I understand the impulse, but it was just really frustrating to go through a couple of years there without having picks in those top rounds, because that's how you end up with a defense that looks like it did last year. Like, that's part of it. It's a big part of why. I
think there are places on this roster where you can afford, like, see, here is the argument against Myles Garrett is I think the defensive line, particularly the edge rush position, is somewhere where there is value to building through the draft. There is value to going younger. 100%. I think Bryson, if you're going to add another receiver, I think it needs to be a veteran. I don't think you spend a high draft pick, even if you are in position to take McMillan, the best.
Yeah, not a high draft pick.
Wide receiver in this draft. I think you need, so you probably have your top 3. Well,
but that's not in like my top 3 areas of need for them.
No, I would agree. And this is where I would say I would also prefer you take either a veteran corner or a veteran safety. I don't want, even though you're going to take both in the draft, I don't want both. I don't want J.C. Horn being the only guy that has played meaningful reps.
Yeah, I think a corner is a good call. Because it's sort of like, I don't know. You're right. You can find edge rush talent and cultivate that. And same with wide receiver, I would argue.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Coker, that's an undrafted free agent and he's become a really valuable piece for them. I'm not saying that like you don't want talent at that spot, but I'm saying you can build a good wide receiver room. It might not be great, but it'll be good enough. Yeah.
It's why, like, I think 8 could be trade bait for the right guy, but I don't know that right guy is any of these guys that have been listed as potential trade targets.
Garrett only jumps off the page because, again, you would want a guy about of his skill, like of his sure skill level. But at the same time, like you said, you could build with that through the draft. And like for me, the most important positions are like you would want to see a corner that's a vet. If you're going to sign somebody that's a vet, it would be nice to have somebody like a corner because I do think there's a distinct learning curve in the league for that position.
Yeah, agreed.
And it's great to get a guy in there that knows what they're doing already, and you don't have to have kind of take their lumps, so to speak.
8 is interesting. And remember, mock drafts mean nothing has actually happened yet. Nobody is gaining or losing any value. But 8 lately has become too late to get Abdul Carter. And I told you this last time we recorded, like, I think there's a lot of pass rush talent in this draft, but that dude is just a different level than everybody else. So, I think 8 now comes into play as tradable, even if it's just moving down to add more picks.
The dream, yes. Like, again, give me all of the, like, my philosophy on the draft, especially after the last few years. It's like, give me all of the picks, please.
Yeah.
Like, all of the picks, because that's capital.
Yeah.
And there's really not a whole lot else the Panthers have in terms of capital right now. Like,
well, let's talk about that. Not just capital, but what is in the bank. Let's talk about cap space a little bit, because the Panthers, they're not, I guess the best way to describe it is, they are not strapped for cash, but they do not have a lot of wiggle room.
Relatable.
They are going to have about $20 million of cap space, which ain't nothing, but it is literally right in the middle of the pack in terms of projections.
It's better than they have been, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. So not everybody has to be cut. That is not the answer. You look at someone like a Taylor Moton, restructuring his contract would do about the same as cutting him would. So you restructure. I mean, that would be my gut, is you restructure.
And I like him. I'd like him to stay. There
are dudes like Derek Brown who you can restructure to help yourself, but if you cut him, you take a big hit. So, like, there's a lot of candidates like that on the roster. But there are also dudes like DJ Wanham, who I know, I've been very heavy on, like, you cut it. And
it's personal with you.
It's getting there. Jadeveon Clowney is another one where there is no savings to be had by restructuring a dude with a 1-year deal, right? Unless unless one of them is going to come in and say, unless one of them is going to come in and say, hey, I'll take $5 million less than you owe me. Like, it's just not going to work out. So you cut him.
Likelier to do that, wouldn't you say, of the two?
Of be willing to take less? No, hell no. He's at the end of his career.
Well, sure, but he's also at home, and it's not like anyone else is beating his door down.
I mean, Wanham is also, I think, at home. Maybe not like home, but he's from South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Well, I know. Like, Clowney's like home. But yeah.
No, I think you cut those guys. It doesn't mean you don't try and re-sign them for less. Like, that happens all the time in the NFL. But remember, you have to have enough money to sign your rookies.
Right. You
have to field a full roster. Like, you're going to have to create money wherever you can. And so it's going to look, I think the offseason is going to look very uncertain before a roster starts to come together.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it's handled, because, like, they spent almost all, like, I forget what the cap difference was between the offense and the defense, but it's wild. When you look at it, you're like, oh. Yeah,
not only is it wild, remember, they had to get pretty creative last year, especially the back half of free agency, to fit in Jadeveon Clowney, to fit in DJ Wanham, to make room for, or I guess make room for what they were hoping would be a long-term signing of Deontay Johnson. Like, when the offseason began, it did not look like they had the money to do those things.
Yeah.
And it's going to be similar this season with a little bit more money to play with. I would say, have you seen all of these futures and reserves contracts they've been signing lately?
No.
They've got more than anybody else, but even still, it's only like 4 dudes. What I would say to everybody is, don't get too high or low on any of these guys. Jalen Coker is a 1 in a million kind of thing, right? Like, we wouldn't have a draft if it was easy to find star talent amongst the undrafted free agents.
Right.
So this is like, I feel like the futures and reserves contracts are the hand the magician wants you to be paying attention to, right? Like, we're doing something. Look at us doing something, getting ready for the new season, while actually a whole lot of nothing is what is going on right now with the Carolina Panthers.
You know what? Nothing is better than bad.
Agreed.
So I love to see nothing.
Agreed. It is, I think the futures and reserves contracts, I don't know how new they are in the league. I do know that, like, this is the first year I've seen any team, like, take the helmets off for a second. It's the first year I've seen any team be this active in the lead up to the Super Bowl on these kind of things. And maybe it's because we're doing a team specific podcast and I'm focused on Panthers news, but boy, I don't remember anybody just stack it up on dudes at this stage in postseasons past.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly don't remember them doing it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and here's the other thing. Maybe they have been, but again, nothing tends to come of these guys.
Right.
They will be on the practice squad, if that. Don't forget to go to ogtrianglemedia.com. That is how you sign up for OG fans. That is how you get all the coverage of everything happening in the Triangle, whether it is more in-depth Panthers talk with Lauren Brownlow every Monday, Joe Giglio talking about the ACC, Tom Edwards writing about the Carolina Hurricanes, and every Friday, movie and TV recommendations from Lauren Brownlow. By the way, Lauren, someone came up to me. Actually, no, I take it back. 2 people came up to me independent of each other. There were OG fan subscribers came up to me at the Basketball Jones and said the movie reviews are their favorite thing.
Oh,
and I thought about this.
that's so sweet.
I thought about this, and this is where, like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. You and I have this podcast. We talk about the Panthers here, right?
Yes.
Ovius and Giglio talk about the Canes and the ACC on their podcast.
Right.
They talk about the Panthers on their podcast. Your movie reviews are the only thing that you can only get on OG fans. There is no other outlet for
some
it.
TV reviews as well thrown into the mix.
Yep.
Because I watch a lot of that. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm trying to get caught up on all my Oscar stuff. I'm almost there.
Very good. All right, so go to ogtrianglemedia.com. Sign up to be a part of the OG fans family today. I mentioned the Basketball Jones. It was very well received, and thank you to everybody who bought a ticket and came out and supported us. There may be more of those things this year than I had initially anticipated.
Oh.
So your OG fan subscription could pay for itself in ticket discounts very quickly.
Look at that.
Yes, indeed.
Nice.
So again, ogtrianglemedia.com. Lauren Brownlow, every single former Panthers coach, it feels like, was making news this week.
I definitely saw at least one in this and laughed quite a bit.
Yeah, Steve Wilkes is going to be the new DC of the New York Jets.
I want to be happy for him, but then you finish the sentence.
Right. Honestly, Lauren, it's the way I feel about Aaron Glenn. Like you were such a hot candidate. What are you doing? It's not great. Yeah, it's a very good comparison.
Sorry.
Yeah. Look, the Jets obviously have a lot of work to do. I think Steve Wilkes is a good, steady hand for them. I don't know what the ceiling is.
For them to fire him after a year unfairly.
It's cool. Again, like if you are Aaron Glenn,
I could see the future,
and you have that many options, why the Jets? I don't get it.
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me also because like some of these guys that I watched play very regularly as a kid, like being head coaches now, some of them it like comes out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh. Wow.
Ron Rivera has interviewed for an undisclosed position with the Jaguars. I talked
Jim Caldwell. Do you type?
So I asked Mia O'Brien, who does our women's basketball podcast, is on the radio and covers the Jaguars down in Jacksonville. I asked, I said, is that what it is? Because that,
like an advisory?
Yeah, like if you're not saying the position, that makes a lot of sense. And she said that is what she believes it is. That is not what she has been told it is. However, it is worth noting, and she didn't tell me if this was coming from just her knowledge or things she had heard directly. It is worth noting that Dave Canales' agent is Liam Cohen's agent, and there's a very specific way he wants to set his guys up for success.
Oh, interesting.
So if Jim Caldwell was there now granted, Caldwell was part of Reich staff, but if he was retained for Canales in that way, why would you not do the same thing with Rivera in Jacksonville?
I like that for them. It's smart. I mean, I Ron has his issues, but I think he has a good feel for he certainly has a good feel for, like, if nothing else, team dynamics and that kind of like psychology. And
I would argue that might be an ideal role for him at this point for that very reason. Like, I think he overstayed with both teams in terms of being an X and O head coach, both the Panthers and Washington.
He's not a game manager, per se. He's just not. He did try. I do give him credit because he tried and he did things outside of his comfort zone during his tenure to try to make his team better. I respect that when coaches can do that, because not all of them will do that.
Right. Yesterday on my, I can't remember if it was Twitter or Blue Sky, but on one of those feeds, for some reason, the video of Ron Rivera disciplining is the wrong word, but sitting with Devin Funchess after. Have you seen this video before?
I don't think so.
Funchess's cousin is killed, and Funchess goes to the funeral in the morning, and by the afternoon is at practice with the Panthers, and he gets into a physical altercation. And so I don't know who captures this on video, but Ron Rivera takes Devin Funchess, walks him to the sideline, and the first thing he says is, "Buddy, I'm sorry. I didn't know the funeral was today. I wouldn't have asked you to be out here." And it immediately disarmed Devin Funchess. Yeah. It's like, man, that is a really good manager of people, and a guy that clearly cares about his guys.
Like, that's the thing about, I mean, that's a lot of guys in that locker room would have, they just loved Ron, and they really tried to rally around him. And anytime his job was in any kind of trouble, they really tried to rally their way out of it. And you could tell. And that was enough to turn my head a little bit when I was frustrated with Ron too, of like, okay, they really care about him, and you could tell. And you could tell he cared. He cared as well. And like that, you can't fake that as a coach. Like,
yeah, I agree.
You can tell.
I mean, I think in terms of performance as a coach, I always thought our overall frustration, and I'm not speaking as a fan of the Panthers at this point, just a general football observer.
Yeah.
I thought our overall frustration with and distrust of Dave Gettleman took a lot of the arrows for Ron coming up short.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Not for me personally, but yes, I know because like Ron had the same issues over and over again.
Yeah.
And it was just like, but then when he finally started going for it more on fourth down and stuff like that, and he finally started hiring play callers that were a little more dynamic, and he finally started like doing some things differently. That's when I was like, okay, fine. But before, defensive guys are more stubborn than the offensive minded head coaches. They don't like taking chances. They got to learn lessons the hard way.
Yeah. I would not say that Ron did not deserve a second opportunity to be a head coach when Washington hired him. He did.
Yeah, I was happy for him.
I think it's time. Like, I don't think he has much to offer in terms of being an X and O guy anymore.
Mike
but
McCarthy keeps getting hired in places.
Mike McCarthy has the 5th most wins in playoff history.
Which is wild.
It's crazy, right?
He's like the worst bad coach or worst good coach.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Like, in terms of numbers and whatever.
I mean, look, I think he is. I think he's definitely a good coach, but I'm with you. Like, I would not
anywhere near my football team.
I think you would have to remind me that he is a good coach for me to remember that he is a good coach.
Often he makes a facial expression like he's afraid he left the oven on at home.
Yeah.
And I don't need that level of fear and panic.
All right, let's talk about the former Panthers coach. I know you want to talk about.
Yeah, this is the one I saw.
MattRhule. Now the head coach.
Very well put in our notes, by the way.
Yes. MattRhule. I wrote in our notes, MattRhule is mad at TVs. MattRhule, now the head coach at the University of Nebraska, has said that he doesn't think the Cornhuskers are going to have a spring game this year. Now, we know about spring games. Anywhere that is a college football or college sports hotbed, you know about spring games. What should be pointed out is Nebraska's spring game has sold out every year for decades. It is a major generator of revenue that they do not have to share with anybody.
Yeah.
And he is saying, hey, I don't think I want our opponents to see our guys so they can come tamper with them and get them out of the transfer, or get them into and then out of the transfer portal. I really hate coaches that complain about having to get better at their jobs. But the thing about this one is, okay, what is your plan for the actual season? Because if this is your justification for canceling the spring game, hey, our opponents might see us and want my guys, couldn't that be applied to literally every single football game?
Yeah, I mean, okay, look. Far be it for me to defend MattRhule at all. So please know this is difficult.
Sure.
I did listen to the Cover 3 podcast yesterday. Our friends, Chip Patterson was at Basketball Jones as well, so shouting them out. But they were talking about the fact that
lobbying hard, by the way, for the Cover 3 to be part of the Sports Podcast Festival.
We'd love to see it because we love everyone almost on there. So
that's the right way to say this. We'd love to see it at the right price.
Okay. Well,
listen, I got to take a hard line on negotiations.
Already, I get it. No, but they were saying basically that, like, sometimes you get transfers too already. So you have you have guys further down your roster that no one has genuinely seen yet.
Yeah.
And so the spring game being on television automatically means that guys that no one has seen play yet and have no reason to know anything about
and this isn't just Nebraska. This is like everywhere. Because obviously some of you might say, really? Nebraska? It's really that in demand? Okay. Which is fair to laugh at him for that reason. But it's like, there is that fear of like, okay, if we put this on TV and like all of a sudden some dude or they start asking for more money, they start wanting to restructure NIL deals or whatever. And like their agents come into play and it becomes a big thing. And so there is a genuine concern like from other teams as well about like, okay, we don't want to put this on and then have people start reaching out because it is kind of the Wild West out there when it comes to that kind of a thing. But it's also like, well, that's a choice, Matt. Not want to have a spring game at Nebraska. That's it's a bold move.
I'm not saying that
back to a bowl game.
I'm not saying that what MattRhule is saying, there is not some truth to it. What I am saying is this is football.
Right.
It has always been on television.
Yeah.
People have always been able to see. And if the concern is what you think, which I had not considered, that some of these guys may want to be restructuring their NIL deal. MattRhule, no wonder you didn't fucking make it in the NFL. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Or just like guys that didn't even get in during the one makes more sense to me is actually like the guys that didn't get in during the regular season and all of a sudden get in during the spring game and then boom, like, oh hey.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, if I'm at a college that's offering those players, and the only thing we have to go on is the Nebraska spring game, I'm a little concerned about the decision making of my head coach.
This is, and understand, I have never played organized football. Obviously, have never coached organized football. When MattRhule said this, my first thought was, isn't the point of the spring game to put everybody in a position to succeed? I mean,
well,
what on earth are you using, or are you taking from a spring game?
It's not like it depends because some people have like A team versus B team,
sure,
which I don't think that's putting the B team in position to succeed. So your starters versus your backups, that's really not putting any.
I think at Alabama there used to be a draft, right? So the teams would kind of have equal talent.
See, that's what you have to kind of do.
But I think now it is like
drafted or something, or whatever. Have some fun with it. Make it televised. Make it silly.
I think now it is like one team, like the white team, would be the starters on offense and the backups on defense, and the crimson team would be the backups on offense and the starters on defense. So you're right. You are always seeing like the best guys have the chance to succeed. I just don't know what you're learning from spring games or what you could be showing at spring games.
Do you know how much I used to hate covering spring games?
Oh, they're awful.
Well,
see, that's the other part of this. MattRhule, run the most boring fucking playbook you can at the spring game then.
I always thought of my schedule when I worked all the time as like a teacher.
Nothing but cancer patient kids running in touchdowns all day long.
But I used to think of it like a teacher, whereas like I got the summer off.
Yeah.
And part of my summer, at least from football, part of my time away was like the spring, and usually I'm covering basketball pretty deep at that point too, and they'll be like, oh, the spring game right before the Final Four or whatever the hell and I'd be like, no, why are you doing this?
It looks like the most popular weekend for spring games is literally the one right after the Final Four this year,
or that, and then I'm like, I just got done with basketball. This is my summer. It's like if you're a teacher and they ask you to come back like a week and a half after you just got get out of here. No.
Despite our lack of joy or excitement, it is Super Bowl week. And Lauren, I did want to talk with you a little bit about what you wrote for OG fans this week, sort of reflecting on the fact that, reflecting on Cam's interview with Jalen Hurts, where he basically said, look, I thought I was going to get a second chance at it. And I didn't. Like, do you know how lucky you are to have this? You wrote that, and this surprised me. You wrote that you thought Cam was that dude so much that it was a no-brainer they'd be back, but you kind of knew they would. That was
what my head thought.
Right.
My heart felt different.
Oh, yeah. So talk me through that.
Well, they were very good that year. They were set up for success in terms of like a lot of pieces they had weren't super old,
Right.
They needed to make some improvements, but I think it was pretty obvious where O-line.
Receiving core as well.
Right. Well, Cotchery did catch it.
Right.
It's neither here nor there. It's neither here nor there. It's really fine. I haven't let it go.
Yeah, that's fine. I won't. But yeah, I mean, I thought they'd get back, but there was just something telling me they wouldn't. And partially because, like, you just know how hard it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can have a really good team set up to do really well, and then all of a sudden, like, just stuff starts to go the other way. Like, you lose one guy that's maybe more important to your locker room than you think he is, or whatever it is, and the backup's not who you think they are, and all of a sudden everything just starts to go to shit. And so I just wasn't. I was worried that it wouldn't happen again. But I just thought, like, Cam is that good.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really until the next season started and they played at the Broncos and the refs let the Broncos beat the shit out of Cam's head like it was a football.
Yeah.
That I knew that it would never happen again for him. Just like, I just was like, and I know that sounds like dramatic. I don't think so. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, if the league, like, literally everyone just watched this and everyone's cool with it, everyone's just like letting it happen, no one's saying anything. I mean, I'm sorry. Am I crazy? Am I the crazy one?
Well,
like,
you know what's funny is that year
I felt crazy.
That year they went to the Super Bowl, the 15 season. Obviously, that's Cam's MVP year.
Yeah. That
is a 15-1 season. That is a 15-1 season largely on the strength of Cam's MVP year. But remember, Lauren, that is also the year that we had a lot of, let's call it, I'm going to call it Cam scandal. But it's all in people's minds, right? You had the woman that wrote the letter to the editor in Nashville about
gyrations.
Yes, about having to watch all the gyrations. Oh. You also remember that year you had the referee telling Cam that he's not old enough to get a roughing the passer call on something. So I don't think the league was necessarily lined up against Cam. Like, I don't think there was some sort of conspiracy to keep Cam down. However, I did think, like, the evidence is overwhelming that this dude is climbing a mountain no one else is.
Yes, that's more what I mean.
Yeah,
but because, like, honestly, what happened to him in that Denver game was, like, bordering criminal.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to exaggerate, but
no, it was. I mean, like, even as somebody that was not a Panthers fan at that point, I was shocked.
Die.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I felt sick. I was nauseous, physically nauseous watching it. Like, I really felt like we might watch him die. Because I knew he wouldn't come out.
Right.
I knew Ron wasn't going to take him out. And some of that is Ron respecting what the player wants and whatever. And, you know, Cam never wanted to come out. But, like, I just knew at that point, I was like, Did you see someone in our comments asked if we could be done celebrating the quarterback that would not give up his MVP for a Super Bowl? What? Did you not see this comment someone left for us on Instagram? I try not to read comments because of my mental health.
So the comment, it's going to take me a second to pull it up, but the comment was basically something to the effect of, can we please stop giving so much of the benefit of the doubt? Hang on.
Benefit of the doubt.
Hang on, here it is. As a Panthers fan, is it time to stop celebrating the selfish quarterback who recently said he wouldn't trade his MVP for a Super Bowl? My reaction to that.
I got reactions.
Listen, I didn't respond to the guy because I knew I wanted to bring it up with you. My reaction to that is, I'm sorry. Why would anyone trade their MVP for a Super Bowl? If you're a competitor, wouldn't you want both?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want both? And also, if you have eyes and you watch that, let me collect my thoughts here. If you have eyes and you watch the Cam Newton era of the Panthers, you should be flabbergasted that dude feels any obligation to this franchise anymore.
Thank you. You got that part. You got what I was going to get at.
I mean, I before you and I started doing this show, like in that time between our radio show and this show. Well, like you and I have talked about this before, that like I have said on national shows, on, in columns I've written for Barrett Media, like I think the evidence is overwhelming that the Panthers straight up did not like Cam. Like based on who they got to play with him, I think the evidence is overwhelming. They hated this guy. And look,
I thought it was just me personally.
Yeah, and look here.
I was like, why do you hate me?
Right.
Why are you doing this to me?
I mean, obviously that is not exactly true. But if you are Cam Newton, why on earth would you give up your MVP season so that people that were not helping you that season could have a Super Bowl?
Also, like, sorry that he's not a liar.
Right.
Lots of other people lie to you. They
Right.
just do.
Right. If you told Michael Jordan, the ultimate competitor in everyone's eyes, right? You give up all of those MVPs and you could have 2 more titles, 1 more title. I guarantee you, he's saying, no, thanks.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would completely agree with that, actually.
And I know I can hear all of you out there say, well, it's different because it's got to. No, it's not. It's about, would you give up individual honors
I had to think
for
about
team
it
glory?
for a minute because Jordan really is like, but you hear guys say stuff like, oh, I don't care if we win when I go out and get 2 points. I think you do care.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that's bad to care.
Right. No, it's not bad to care.
You want to help. You don't want to hurt.
If you are Cam Newton, right?
What? Yeah.
If you are Cam Newton, it is not bad to care how you perform because you know how you perform is going to dictate how the team performs. You know that.
Right.
You know that.
If they traded their MVP, if he traded his MVP for a Super Bowl, by
Yeah.
the way, they don't get to the Super Bowl. So
No, absolutely not.
just saying.
Absolutely. Like you would have
I get
to.
your cool hypothetical and all, but they don't get there without it.
Yeah. All right. Last thing I want to hit on with you. You and I talked about this just in text message before you started writing on Monday, and you talked about. And actually, I take it back. You did put this in the article. The joy, the unexpected success of 03 brought you. And I wanted to juxtapose that with the absolute apathy everybody is feeling for this Super Bowl.
I was going to say 15 because the weight I felt was
sure.
so crushing.
Sure.
And you and I were doing a sports talk radio show in the morning.
In the mornings.
I'm pregnant.
Yep.
I'm a mess. I'm just so anxious. I just hated it. I was like, please just get this game. Oh, I wanted the Band-Aid ripped so badly. And that was the longest 2 weeks of my life.
Yeah. I went back after you and I had our conversation and sort of looked at with the run up to Super Bowl 38. So the 03 season. I looked back at the run up and I think you had something interesting happening on both sides. First of all, you had the first time ever, right, since we went to 2 byes that a team without a bye, that we went from a play-in game to 2 byes.
Correct.
The first time ever that a team without a bye had made the Super Bowl.
1990. Yeah.
Also, you had a team come off of a 2 overtime win in the divisional round. On the other side, you had the Patriots dynasty beginning, right? Yeah. I think there was something new and something exciting on every side of that Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And Janet Jackson's nipples to make you feel like that is a memory that's a game that, like, look, 2 years before, we had the Patriots win on the last second field goal in New Orleans. I thought at that point the best Super Bowl I had ever seen. And then 2 years later, here came this game.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody has any faith we're going to see that on Sunday.
No, I think that definitely plays a role, like you said, too. It's like, and look, I mean, to be fair, the headline, one of the headlines I saw, because I was trying to find an NFC championship game recap, which was way harder than I thought it would be for that year, actually. But I found one.
Yeah.
They beat Philly. Ricky Manning Jr. had like 3 or 4 picks or something. It was 14-3. It was great.
The greatest Manning to ever play football.
For the Panthers, anyway. But anyway, like one of the ESPN like subheads or whatever back in the Page 2 days was like TV's worst nightmare or something. And I was like, hell yeah, right in my veins. Give me that small market juice. Let's freaking go. Like,
do you realize the Patriots? So the Patriots were 14-2 coming into that game, regular season coming into that game. Do you realize after the first 4 weeks of the season they were 2-2, and after that just went on this like murderer's row? Yeah. Of going into that Super Bowl?
And the Panthers had a similar story, actually, where they went on a bit of a skit. Like, if you listen to Anish Shroff did a podcast called Cardiac Cats, and it's incredible about that season and, like, the kind of corner they turned to get to that place. And I love that team so much and so hard. I got so into their lore. I went to games that year. I knew every player. Like, I made cookies with their numbers and names on. I made cookies.
Sure.
Me. I know. And I just was like, I loved them so hard. I never loved a Panthers team as like just purely as I loved that one. I loved them so much. Because it was unexpected. It was like, oh, they went on a run and they were also really good. And who knows, maybe we'll win it. Maybe we won't, you know, like, and so it's weird, right? Because it's like,
the Chiefs feel inevitable, I think, is really what it is. Back then, nothing felt inevitable. I felt like we would lose because I'm like, what are we even doing here? This is a 7-year-old franchise. I'm living in a dream world.
Right.
You know? But, like, no one feels that coming into this. Like, Jalen Hurts has to feel a ton of pressure, even though he's in an impossible situation, like having to outduel Patrick Mahomes.
I told Joe Giglio, there is a way that I see Philadelphia winning this, and it is the most aesthetically unpleasing Super Bowl you could possibly imagine.
Well, yeah.
It is basically Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts play a 60-minute game of keep away with the Chiefs.
Yeah, pretty much. You'd have to get into some service academy ball.
Absolutely,
100%. Let's do it.
And
I love that stuff.
As I say, and not even service academies who are practicing that every week. It's just going to be sloppy and gross.
You know, I do echo our friend Bomani Jones's sentiments about this particular part of football. I like watching pretty passes as much as anybody else, but there is something very satisfying about just watching the offensive line just mowing down the front and like the running back just like waiting patiently for the perfect hole to open up and like hit. There's something very satisfying about watching your team do that to someone.
There is, I would say though. Even that style of football
I don't
looks better when people are getting trucked rather than just waiting on things. Do you have a pick? Do we want to do picks for the Super Bowl?
Well, the Chiefs are going to win or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's going to be ugly and unwatchable very quickly.
Yeah, and it is what it is. Look, I want to be clear. There is something to be said for appreciating greatness. But I also don't think that anyone who gets a little bored with the same team over and over it's not. Look, I love Lamar Jackson. Okay, I love him very much. I want to see him in this game. We need what we could have had in the Super Bowl. We could have had Detroit and Baltimore.
Yeah,
that would have ruled.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's nothing against the Chiefs. Like Patrick Mahomes is one of the best we've ever seen. If not the.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that highly of him. I love Andy Reid. He's terrific.
I was telling Ovius this when he was trying to sell me on no, the story is the Chiefs and the three people, blah, blah, blah. It's like, look, there have been teams that have been bad our whole lives that we've seen the Saints go to the Super Bowl. We've seen the Cardinals go to the Super Bowl. We've seen all these teams that are hopeless. The Browns and the Lions are the two that feel unfathomable. That the fact they had a legitimate chance. Well, sure.
The Lions, I want and need. Like, I was so sad when they lost. I was heartbroken. I love the Lions. Like, I love Dan Campbell. I love what he's doing there. It's so fun.
Yeah.
You know? And I just think that we need more of that. And it's not like the Chiefs are unfun. I'm not saying that. Right? Obviously, they made it interesting more often than they didn't this year. So, credit to them, I guess, for that. Right?
Can the Panthers claim a transitive Super Bowl almost win?
Well, so can a lot of people. Didn't the Raiders almost beat them?
Everybody almost beat them.
Well, not everybody.
A lot of people almost beat them.
That's very true.